Thank you. My name is Adam Smith. I'm a senior fellow here at IPI, head of the Center for Peace Operations. Thanks for sticking with us through the coffee break and into the second panel. As Francesco mentioned, the second panel today will be more operationally focused. We're looking at needs in the field, and we're looking at specific pilot projects, things that have already started, some innovation that's already happening in the field. So this will be about specifics. We'll be nailing down, drilling down. We have people from Office of Military Affairs, Information and Communications Technology, Police Division, Mine Action Service, and we have a representative of the private sector to speak with us. If you like PowerPoint presentations, this is the panel for you. We have 5 PowerPoint presentations, so we don't have anyone sitting on the panel right now. We'll go up one by one here from the podium, and then we'll all take seats on the panel so you can ask questions after the presentations. But I would ask all the panelists to limit their presentations to 5 to 6 minutes so we can get everything in and we can get a robust question and answer session after that. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you to the Permanent Mission of Italy to the UN. And without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, Andreas Jodicki from the Office of Military Affairs, UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. If you look at the slide and behind my name, you see Chief AT. AT means assessment team, and this goes back to a discussion we already had at the beginning of this forum. It was about intelligence as a term within the UN system. When the assessment team was decided about in the General Assembly in 2008. It was actually about a military intelligence component for the Office of Military Affairs. But at that time, nobody was able to call it what it is. But actually, the small group of men and women I lead are dealing basically with military intelligence. On Friday, I briefed at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, the so-called Peacekeeping and Stabilization Operation Institute, and we talked about peacekeeping operations, and of course we talked about new technology, and it was the international course, and we had a lot of international fellows in that course that already had peacekeeping experience. And the interesting thing is, when I've finished my presentation, somebody said, well, this is a revolution in the UN system. I cannot follow completely that we are in the status of a revolution, but I want to give you a very few examples of where we are standing right now when it comes to considerations about technology and the use of technology within peacekeeping operations. I keep my briefing very, very short because there is so much more where we use technology in the UN, and I want to give room to my fellow speakers rather than occupying this. Now I have to operate this in the right way. This is what everybody is talking about. The UN-marked unmanned aerial system in Goma. We have used it already several times. USG Latsus referred to an operation we have flown for the World Food Program. We have been able to confirm attacks on villages, which we would have never been able to confirm because there's simply no road going to that place. We have already tasked the system in the middle of the night in order to confirm reports by the FARDC that they were driven out of their command posts by illegally armed groups, and we could even see and document at night that these illegal armed groups were taking over the positions that the FARDC held before. He also mentioned tomorrow we will have full operational capability. That means we will have 5 of these aircraft, and we can operate them in a crisis up to 72 hours without any interruptions. We have enough pilots, we have enough payload operators, we have enough ground stations, antennas, and the range is at least 200 kilometers with a few tricks just like using one of the UAVs as a relay. We can push out for another 200 kilometers. So we have a lot of options. And the usual loiter time, which means the time over the area of interest, is up to 12 hours. So we have a very powerful system. But if you look down below, I took this picture myself. It's in a small village in the middle of the jungle. We had to use a clearing in the jungle to land with our helicopters. And the Force Intervention Brigade, and these are soldiers of the Force Intervention Brigade, showed us the UAV they are using. And they are just using it in a range of maybe 1 to 2 kilometers. Just when they come around the corner, they just want to see what is happening behind. So you see, the troop is very innovative when it comes to their own force protection. And that is one of the reasons why I documented this. This is a handheld, just like a model airplane, radio controlled. It doesn't support you with a great quality of images, but at least you can look whether there is an ambush behind the next corner or not. Something we are looking at right now is the protection of our installations in Mali. And especially if you have an airport in the desert, tethered balloons, also called aerostats, are a very cheap solution and a very convenient solution. You don't need much training for that. As a matter of fact, you just have a CCTV underneath this balloon and you can fly it for a long time. And even if people shoot at these balloons, they have several chambers. You cannot down them really. So it's a real good solution, and we are really looking into it. But in addition, there are other solutions like this. This is also a simple technical solution where you have that kind of camera I just showed you underneath the balloon, mounted on a mast, and you just erect the mast and you have a view around your camp. And in addition, you can lift up a radar, and this radar would actually help you identify movements on the ground as well as in the air. You cannot use it as an air traffic control radar, but it would warn you if something is flying towards you. Firefinder radars and moving service target radars. For example, we have the situation in Andorf right now that we are in crossfires all the time. Our peacekeepers have to hit the bunkers all the time. Sometimes it's very difficult to identify from where you are fired at. And I'm an ex-military. I've been on missions. I've been fired at, and I can tell you this is probably the hardest thing to say where the bullets are coming from. If you have these kinds of radars, it would help you greatly to identify a threat, and especially the moving surface target radar would help you to identify persons up to 5 kilometers away from your place, vehicles up to 10 kilometers. So this would greatly add to the force protection. Another force protection issue is IEDs. All the incidents we had in Mali in the last 4 weeks were IED incidents. So something that was not really an issue for the UN for a long time now has become an issue. We are threatened by IEDs as many others too. This is a French truck, and this truck has a counter-IED jammer mounted in front of the vehicle. I'm showing that to you to make you aware of the following. We have a lot of technology within the missions, but not on a systematic basis. And in many cases, it's the initiative of the member state that is adding protection to their contingents. That the French truck has an IED jammer doesn't mean that when we drive a Spanish truck, this Spanish truck has an IED jammer too. No, this is just a national asset that has been added to the force. So force requirements are still relatively simple and low in the UN system. And especially when you see Western member states bringing in contingents, they are looking very much into force protection. For example, we will get Scandinavian member states into the Mali mission, and I can tell you they probably bring more force protection technology assets with them than we can find in many other missions in total. So this concludes my short introduction, and I would like to hand over back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Andreas. Lots of potential military technology that we heard about. Secondly, I'd like to hand over to Suzanne Shanahan from the Information and Communications Technology Division, UN Department of Field Support. Thanks.
This one, right? Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Shanahan. I'm the Chief of the Field Information Solutions Section, and we're mandated to bring information technology solutions to the field. Today I'm going to talk to you about some technology innovations we're doing specifically in the area of situational awareness. Traditionally, ICT in the field has focused on communications, bringing basic telecommunications, radios, and internet access into the countries where we operate that often did not provide those services. In information systems, we focused on transactional data, automating finance, HR, procurement, supply chain. But in recent years, we're becoming more focused on enabling collaboration and information sharing, and that is sort of the lifeblood of situational awareness. We're working with mandates that are increasingly complex and integrated, and they're demanding solutions that are flexible and adaptable, and the word everywhere is mobile. How can we get to our information while we're traveling, while we're moving towards different operational areas? DPK DFS is carefully watching the market, and we're trying to sort of stay in lockstep with technology opportunities that are available to us. What I'm going to focus on today is an area of situational awareness. Operational and situational awareness and effective crisis response demands that we have information that is timely, that's accurate, that's dependable, and that's consumable. The information cycle remains the same. We collect it, we validate it, we analyze it, and we visualize it. But the way that we're doing that is fundamentally changing. The technologies that we're putting in place to standardize the way we do this is accelerating this process and reducing the steps in between each point. Often, we have a lag in the time it takes for the information in the field to get to headquarters, and we're trying to close that gap. When I talk about consumable information, that means information that has context, moving away from the old-fashioned sort of word-based document reports and moving towards dynamic data, data on a map, data that's visualized on a dashboard, and that's easier to process and to visualize patterns across. So one of the projects that we're working on is a system called SAGE. This is an application that was built in partnership with the DPKO Situation Center. It's built on open source technology. It's hosted in our data centers, so it's secure. And it introduces a standard way for missions to accelerate incident reporting. These are some of the screenshots of the application to give you a sense of how it looks and feels. So this SAGE will allow authorized users in a mission to submit their incident reports to a joint operations center. The job of the joint operations center is to validate and to deduplicate information. In the past, someone would have to read through separate reports and look for the numbers that go across and to verify. This way, it brings that information directly to the JOC. The information is additionally geotagged, it's categorized, and that allows you to search the information. You can search based on a geographic range or on a particular type of incident that you're interested in. This flow of reports that are coming through the JOC can be also enhanced with video clips, with audio clips, with photographs, and there is a flag that shows what's been verified and what's not been verified. In some cases, you don't want to introduce a bottleneck. If it's general information that needs to be given immediately to our staff on the ground and it doesn't require a validation, it will be visible to our staff on the ground. But the more sensitive information that has to go through that additional step will go through the JOC. Once we have the data standardized, people can personalize their alerts. This is very relevant in terms of safety and security. If you're a civil affairs officer who's traveling through a certain region, you may want to get incident reports specific to that region. These incident reports can be delivered to your email and keep you abreast of what's happening. We can also have an HQ if we have a crisis cell who's working on a particular functional area in a country. They can get filtered reports to keep them informed of what's happening on the ground. This effectively eradicates the gap between what they can see in the mission and what they can see in the Situation Center, which is a very good step forward for us. What I'm illustrating here are data sharing circles. Once we standardize how we share information inside a mission, we can start looking outwards towards opportunities to share with others. We're currently in phase 1, where we're having a mission standardized substantive units sharing. But once we have that in place, we can extend that to a region. As you can imagine, 2 neighboring countries, an incident in one country can affect immediately the operational situation in the neighboring country. A good example would be Syria and Lebanon. Something happens in Syria, in Lebanon, they would be informed immediately if it's a type of event that could influence their operational security. Beyond the region, and where we are now, which is with the verified sources, we're very interested in looking at UN partner and sharing information within the UN family. We are underway with a project with MINUSCO, which is being facilitated by the ICT for Peace Foundation, to establish what is the data we should be sharing between the UN partners. The third phase is sort of where we see, I think, the most interesting opportunities coming into play. This is crowdsourcing and big data and really harnessing all the eyes on the ground in a way that's practical and operationally viable for us. Good examples of opportunity here would be elections monitoring. And the platform that we're using actually was used for elections monitoring in several countries. This is also an opportunity to share information with governments and with our partners. Another example would be in Haiti. They were sharing road conditions with the local government. As different rotating officers were reporting road conditions, they were immediately available for the local government to be aware of. Okay. GIS is increasingly becoming the backbone of how we present information. Over the years, DPKO has collected an incredible wealth of specific cartographic and GIS data. We're now focusing on standardizing that data and centralizing that data so that every system has that map view, that map layer of visualization, which people can readily absorb and interpret. This shows, it's just a depiction of how we want to bring that into place wherever we can. So what are the next steps? Well, what we have in place now gives us a very good ability to look historically. We can look backwards on history of information we have collected, but it's still a challenge to look forwards. So we can run a report and we can assess a pattern, but we want to expand that range of data to include public information sources, Twitter, Facebook, sentiment extraction, to be able to get us to a point to say, this has happened and this is now likely to happen. That leap into the world of predictive analytics is a relatively big leap for us in terms of technology. And we have several proofs of concept underway, but this is an area where we're really exploring partnerships to be regularized to get us the technical expertise that we need to take these next steps. So with that, I'll close and turn it over to my next.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Very interesting stuff. And I should mention also that IPI has been doing some work in its newly formed data labs on predictive analytics. So touch base on that as well later. My next speaker is Tunde Igaz from the Police Division. Tunde, please.
Thank you for the introduction. This is my honor to represent the Police Division in this significant event. First of all, we were requested to demonstrate what we need and what we think, what we already have in the field and what we think we need for the future. For that, just let me mention quickly our mandate, because it's really complex. Our mandates related with reforming and capacity building the whole state police and law enforcement agencies and protection of civilians. The protection of the UN personnel and the UN facilities must be our priorities. In order to counter transnational organized crime activities, UNPOL needs to exploit the opportunities of the new technologies. Without going into detail, just have a feeling about the complexity, the growing complexity of our tasks. The police components are deployed in DPKO missions and even in political missions as well. Just let me show you the standing police capacity. They complete short-term missions as well. The types of the UNPOL are the individual police officers, the formed police units, and our new concept of the specialized police teams. At this stage, let me start let me focus on the formed police units deployed in Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, DR Congo, Haiti, Sudan, South Sudan, for crowd control, riot control, and public order management. We also have SWAT FPUs in Haiti and Côte d'Ivoire. As you can see, the FPU equipment must be serviceable based on the standard force requirement and the manual on contingent on equipment. You can see the standard equipment, helmet, handgun, shield, tear gas, and even tasers. So it's mandatory equipment, the taser, and the bulletproof vest. We also use armored personal carrier and water cannons in urban areas, but we need more water cannon. You can see the safe firearm discharge device. We already use this in mission, but the old-fashioned version. So this is an example for a modernized version, so we need more. And particularly the IPOs, as I mentioned, the intentional police officers. For example, in Haiti, they are currently implementing the H-Smart technology. This is good for enhanced information management in line with the Haitian development plan. So we're focusing on the needs of the Haitian police. Just an example. Sorry, I have no time to go in details. I would love to, but another occasion. And here we are, the capability challenge. The United Nations Police focus on the proven technology and the cost efficiency. Innovations can help to improve our efficiency in mandate implementation and can enhance the security and safety of the UN personnel. If we manage to increase the level of security of the UN police, that means we can increase the security of the civilians and even other United Nations humanitarian actors, which we are escorting. But first of all, we need generators, sustainable internet connections, and vehicles. Sometimes we are facing recruitment challenges. We are expected to recruit border experts with the latest knowledge. And on the other hand, we also have to find border experts with old-fashioned knowledge who can identify forged passports without using the modern technological tools, because there is no electricity at the border point. This is one of the ideas. This is already a proven technology in the member states, high thermal image technology. The advantage is that this is mobile. The operator can direct and follow the movement of the patrols day and night. Even the suspicious movement can be followed, considering the transnational organized criminal groups as well. Special night and thermal vision equipment already used in the mission, but during the previous panel it was mentioned that we need the fourth or third version of this equipment. Some examples what our FPU colleagues and police components proposed us. So, for example, the preaching ground will be mandatory equipment in the future. Metal detectors can be used in IDP camps to find hidden weapons. This is just a current issue happening in UNMISS. Endoscope and handheld meter search kit could be helped to search trucks as well. I couldn't find photos to search trucks at the border or even inland. Tactical body armor, better quality provide better prevention against injuries. Tactical SWAT helmet camera needed for documentation of operations. But I have to emphasize that the special training should be the part of the member state pre-deployment training. Modern tactical communication sets are essential for the security and the early warning purposes. And let me mention the crime-seek forensic kits. They are rarely available in post-conflict countries. Most of the criminal procedures are based on interrogation and confession. If we want to efficiently fight against transnational organized crime, we need to assist to improve evidence gathering in the host states. Digital fingerprint scanner can be used even at borders checking point, even during election period, and for vetting the police and other law enforcement personnel. Some innovation, we are in cooperation with the Disarmament Office, and this is an example for preventing the unauthorized use of a weapon. There is a fingerprint scanner in the watch, and the weapon consists a digital logging device inside the barrel. So it must be connected or the weapon cannot be used. This is the more expensive proposal for saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tunde. You proved me wrong that you can get through 28 slides in 6 minutes. That was impressive. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions for you for that, all that good information. Our next speaker is Kurt Chesko from Mine Action Service. Please, Kurt.
Thank you. Firstly, thanks to IPI and Italy, who is a contributor to Unmaster, the Voluntary Trust Fund, for putting together this very interesting seminar. With Mine Action, there are and there have been sort of week-long sessions to talk about technology and innovation in Mine Action. I am not going to talk about hundreds and hundreds of different things, but be aware that just I think like any component that's presenting today, that we're just really just scratching the surface on some of the innovation and technology that exists. Unmasked, very briefly, our original focus when we were first created was to focus on landmines, but really our focus has expanded to include ammunition storage management, small arms, light weapons disposal, counter IED, weapons and stockpile management. And we are the lead UN focal point for explosive hazards and mine action within the UN. So just very, very briefly, I just chose one example of an interesting piece of technology in the context of a peacekeeping mission, and that is this CASSPIR bomb arm. And it is a modification of a traditional armored CASSPIR with the V-shaped hull to sort of deflect explosions. It has this addition, this articulated arm, which can be used to disrupt IEDs or other explosive devices. There's a camera mounted on the arm, and there's also a water disruptor. This, in Somalia, has contributed to a 80% reduction in Amazon casualties caused by IEDs. Not just this, but also other initiatives undertaken by UNMAS in Somalia. Again, and some of my colleagues have touched on this, I mean, there is just so much you could talk about. I mean, when I first started in mine action 13 years ago with a compass and a piece of graph paper to draw minefields, I mean, as my colleague discussed GIS, I mean, that's really changing the way that we map minefields, map resettlement and things like that. And then, of course, huge improvements in detector technology. I just want to say that, and I don't know if it's been said, but there is a lot of technology out there. Mine action is already expensive, and just because technology exists does not always mean that it's the most effective or the most efficient. And a lot of times the technology that we get simply doesn't work in the field, or it's just too complicated, or it's too expensive. Mine action sometimes is a low-tech, it's a low-tech problem with a low-tech solution. Manual deminers looking for mines with a detector and then digging them up. I just want to talk about two very interesting new developments within UNMAS. And the first one is the Landmine and Explosive Remnants of War Safety Training smartphone application. It was designed in response to requests for access to mobile explosive remnants of war safety training and reporting. It's downloadable on your iPhone, on your iPad, your iTouch, and I think, yeah, Android. And then it's available in English, French, and Spanish. And then once you're in there, it has basic technology or basic information on mine safety. And I also just want to say it does not require connectivity. So once you download it and you're in the field, you can access it. Say someone comes upon some mine or item of unexploded ordnance that they're not familiar with, you can go in there and look through it and try and find it. And then there's also basic safety. And then an interesting component is this little thing here. This is actually a way that people in the field can take a photo of an item, some sort of explosive item, and then it will get reported to HQ. You do need connectivity for this. You take the photo, you send it, it will send to my office here in New York, the location, ID number, and then we will forward that to the specific program. So it's an interesting way to, that somebody, who's maybe somebody from another UN section who is not UNMAS finds something in the field and then can report this back, and then there can be some sort of intervention to deal with it. It launched in October, and we are now putting it into Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, Kurdish, Portuguese, and Russian. And we'll be doing some updates to include IED awareness and IED safety. There's also testing on here so that our colleagues that need to have certain requirements can pass various, mine recognition exams and things like that. It's an interesting idea. I mean, most of us have an iPhone, and it's quite a useful tool. I mean, there have been times where somebody asked me a question about a mine, and I can't remember what the mine is, and I look at it and can give them quite a lot of detail about it. And then I just want to sort of move into a slightly different area that's maybe beyond what we think of necessarily in peacekeeping, and that is in the sort of area of fundraising. It was already talked about in the earlier session, the sort of constraints caused by lack of funding and things like that. UNMAS is unique in that we do receive peacekeeping funds, but we also receive voluntary funding. This is my partnership colleague gave me this interesting quote here about the role of partnerships and the future of the role of partnerships. And he said, "Disruptive models for the delivery of public goods are already here, and the UN needs to be prepared to co-opt these models or risk being sidelined on issues that form its core mandate. These emerging models rely on new technology, the big data revolution, and innovative financing mechanisms." This is just a brand new sort of fundraising tool and way to raise awareness of mine action and UNMAS activities. It's called the Sweeper. It's, again, an app you download, and this was developed in partnership with a Canadian technology company called Critical Mass. And what they did is they took these little beacons called iBeacons, and they hid them around a room. And then we had this, so this was from this last week in conjunction with International Mine Awareness Week. So we had this big exhibit with photos. It was a way to raise awareness. And then you downloaded this app, and then as you walked around the room and you got close to a beacon, it triggered the app, and it was supposed to be it sounded like an explosion. You had headphones and stuff. So it was sort of a virtual way to experience the fear as the way that they marketed it. And then there was an option to donate $5 on your iPhone. And I mean, I'm not really doing it justice because it's quite a complicated thing, but it was a really interesting and unique interactive way. And it's always hard in an issue like mine action that's been around for a while to come up with new and exciting ideas to engage the public, because it's not something that everybody understands. These sorts of fundraising tools are going to be quite important as I already mentioned, as resources get tight. And feel free to ask any questions afterwards. I'm going to hand it back to my colleagues.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kurt. I think IPI is going to go to you and figure out how to do some fundraising better with technology. Next, for a change of pace, for our final presentation, we have an expert from the private sector, Mr. Luigi Piantadosi, Vice President, Global Market Development and International Organizations for Finmeccanica. Thanks so much, Luigi.
Well, first of all, let me thank you, IPI, for this interesting opportunity and the Italian delegation for inviting me. I have also to thank you, the panelists, because I can see a lot of technology outside, technology that being part of the industry I'm not aware of, so you can see how much technology is outside. I have the tough task today because I'm the last panelist, and also because I'm the only speaker outside the envelope of the UN. But I will keep it interesting, I hope. I won't be unveiling any super secret system, so no Iron Man that can sort out UN problems, no blast off, I'm afraid, today. But again, I hope I will give you good ideas. As you can imagine, for industry, innovation is in our DNA. We have to be competitive, and to be competitive, you need solutions, technology, innovation. Let me walk you through some of the possible solutions among the thousands that we have in the market. It could be an idea for you. Everyone here knows about UAVs. There is a lot of technology in the small UAVs. These are man-portable UAV, vertical takeoff and landing, and a platoon, a company being deployed anywhere can immediately have an understanding of the situational awareness within 10 kilometers. So easy to manage, easy to use. And as you can see, you have thermal imaging as well. There are a lot of handheld devices outside. This is a biometric handheld device, and I can see a lot of use in managing refugee camps. When you have to get data out of people, who they are, you can get fingerprints, you can record the data, you can take pictures, and it goes back to a database. So you can handle large mass of people. Very easy technology. We're not talking about difficult one or very expensive technology. Actually, it's very cheap. It's on the market. A quick video, if I can. We've been talking about thermal imaging, second generation, third generation. This is the latest generation, just to give you an idea where the technology is leading about thermal imaging. Current cameras on the market can detect a vehicle up to 50 kilometers. This is huge, small cameras. They can recognize a vehicle 20 kilometers sort of, identify who they are at between 14 and 16. Talking of personnel, you can detect someone at 30 kilometers and so on. Recognize him at 8 and identify at 5 to 6 kilometers. A little bit of image about what we see. This is night. It's taken at night. You can see the definition of the image. You can see even the wheels. And you can see that the person driving is wearing glasses. So it's becoming a big thing. Also, a little bit of images about people, again, from distance, what they're doing. You can easily understand the behavior they're having. In this image, you will see two people getting closer and handing over something between the two. You will see in a minute someone, there you go, is coming and giving something. So this is current technology on thermal imaging. Let's talk about support to missions. We have systems now in the market, and this is a typical one, where by installing this box in the powertrain, you can have 15 kilowatt of power. If you think that your flats usually take 3 kilowatt, and you can use a lot of technology in your flat, you can have 5 flats supporting energy to a village, for instance, just by having a vehicle switched on. This is technology, I think, that can be really useful for the United Nations. there are also a lot of technology in not only detecting but neutralizing threats. So this is a system that is under development, but by aiming at a vehicle, you can switch it off from distance. Very interesting. You don't have to kill anyone, you don't have to shoot, you just have to point the system to a vehicle, and then you can stop the electronics on board of the vehicle and stop it. Simple technology. Talking of power generators, we've been talking a lot about that. This is a huge technology. It's developing very quickly. As you can see, this is taken the picture taken in a camp, and that's a man-portable solar power generators to supply soldiers. This is a great, I think, technology. A company, not my company, unfortunately, the company I work for, has patented a system that can get water from air and mineralize the water and provide water anywhere in the world. That system, as you can see, can provide you 4,000 liters of water available every day, anywhere. That's really impressive technology, I guess. And I was listening earlier on, Mrs. Hack talking of what can we do in the country we operate. That's what we can do. You can bring water to them. Earth observation. This is the world as we imagine it is. This is actually the real picture from a satellite. So difficult to look through clouds. And one more problem, half the world is in the dark. So that has taken companies to develop satellites that are don't have cameras installed, but have a radar that gives a satellite a big power to look through clouds and at night, so they're not blind as many satellites. Let me give an example. During the flood in Australia a few years ago, this is what a normal satellite could see. So nothing. It was very cloudy. It was bad weather condition. And that's what a radar satellite could see, everything. It could detect where the flood was, and it helped Australia to go through the flood and support the population, providing support. Now, big question. I was asked to provide a suggestion. How can the UN address, implement a benefit from innovation? We heard, USG, Latsus and Hack talking about an idea. I didn't talk to them before this, so I wanted to come here with a suggestion, and that is my suggestion. I think the UN needs to understand what's going on in the market in terms of innovation and technology. How can they do that? I wanted to give you an understanding of the way I see the UN working. And that's a typical capability cycle. Operations give you needs, then you generate requirements, you go to the market, buy a product, deliver, and try to learn out of that. I think industry can help you in framing the problem, because we develop technology every day. New technology now, it's in the market every week. And we can help you in identifying possible solutions, real solutions. I'm not talking about the private sector, the entire private sector. We can provide impartial recommendations. And that means, to me, best value for money for the United Nations. And that means also de-risking the implementation, the delivery of the solutions. And we can learn together and grow together and provide better solutions for the United Nations. So the idea is to sort of find a point of a link between the private sector and the United Nations that could enable a collaborative environment. I said in my slide, knowledge exchange, that's what we need. And I think we can assist the United Nations in, as I said, understanding the problems and telling you whether the technology you need is real, is feasible, is not too expensive. All of this in a non-procurement manner. We industry belong to the member states. We don't live, on the moon, on the Mars. We belong to member states. So I think we would be happy to be here in supporting the United Nations mutually for mutual benefits. Thank you very much.
I'd like to first thank all of our panelists for the discussions and a lot of information, so I hope everyone soaked it all in. And I also appreciate that we've kept within the time limits. It's a lot of information to do that, and not easily done. So what I'll go ahead and do is open the floor for initial questions. I have a few myself, but perhaps we'll take from the crowd and we can start a conversation. And a lot to digest, but please, any questions on any of the presentations? Okay, maybe I'll get the ball rolling then. So we saw from each of you different options in the field. What I want to know, and I know we're looking at the working level here, so perhaps you can give us your specific vantage point. What are the obstacles? So we saw some great innovation. Some things are already happening, but obviously they have to be carried further. Some things that aren't happening that we saw some opportunities for. But from your specific vantage point where you sit, what are the main obstacles, and how can we move forward? I think would be interesting to hear. Perhaps we can start way over on the right here with Suzanne. Thanks.
Sure. I think it's one of our greatest obstacles is balancing all of the new and shiny tools that are available with what practically works in the field. And I believe my UNMES colleague mentioned that. Not all the technologies that can be purchased can be translated and work in our operations, where really the last mile is the mile that counts. And that's the mile without the network, and the mile often without the cell phone or any ability to transmit information technically and electronically. So that's where we often get stuck, and I think that's where we put the largest percentage of our effort, is how to close that gap. The other challenge is giving solutions to a very mobile workforce and a workforce that's rotating constantly. We have a rotation of troops, we have a rotation of staff, and you're always training somebody new. Someone is coming in and moving right before you can really get them up to speed. So we have to also develop simple and straightforward solutions that can be taught at a reasonable cost, because we don't have, the budget to fly people around for training. Everything has to be able to be rolled out with minimal types of training support. Thank you.
Andreas, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess one of the points is that there is a discussion about three options: UN-owned equipment, contingent-owned equipment, or actually procurement of equipment in the sense of leasing stuff. And I will explain where the differences lie. For example, if I would buy a UAS, an unmanned aerial vehicle system for the UN, in 5 years, it would be completely outdated from a technical standpoint. So I guess buying high tech for the UN is not always an option. If I lease it from the industry, I can put the contract in a way that they have to update their technical equipment. If I lease a system for 5 years, I can put into the contract, make sure that I will have the latest technology available. If it's contingent-owned equipment, then it's not that big a problem. We have to take what we are offered. And interestingly, when we started to look into the UAS, I really begged member states to supply us with systems, and we got no reaction on that. Interestingly, now that we have a leased option, member states are banging on our doors and are offering their systems, simply because the operational environment has changed a lot during the last 3 years. The missions in Iraq were closed, Afghanistan is about to close, and a lot of systems are flooding back to the market. So people want to get their systems employed. So this is one of the biggest challenges. You have to take a decision based on on the information you have available at that point, but the operational environment can change completely. And this is one of the biggest issues. If you get involved with the committees here in the UN, let's say the C34, then the C34 discusses, for example, technology, puts it into its report, and next year we continue with the discussion. We have seen that for almost 4 years we have discussed modern technology, in this case UAVs, in the C34, and only this year finally it was recognized that we had the conceptual framework already publicized in 2010. So it's also a communication problem. Sometimes we discuss too much and too long in order to get the right stuff at the right time.
Okay, thanks, Andres. And I mean, we started discussing this in 1979, so by that metric, it's been a long time. Kurt.
I think, I mean, for us, probably the biggest obstacle is funding. There are all sorts of equipment that we would like to provide to our implementing partners, and a lot of mine action work that needs to take place. So I would say definitely, funding cuts and things like that are a large obstacle. Also, just things like field conditions, logistics, some sort of new piece of technology that works really well on a flat piece of grassy testing ground on a base or something is not necessarily going to work very well in the middle of Somalia. And then of course you have the issue of just getting some of this equipment, whether it's a large item that's stuck on a container somewhere, or just getting in smaller items that are stuck in customs somewhere. That's a huge problem. And can obviously delay things. And then, I mean, just some of this stuff, you get it into the field, and then what happens when it breaks down? Where's the expertise to deal with that? That can be a huge challenge. I really like the idea of focusing on things that involve mobile technology, just because even in difficult environments, in far-flung places in Afghanistan, in South Sudan, almost everybody has a mobile phone. So, maybe it's not an iPhone 4 or 5 or whatever, but I mean, there's a lot of potential there that I think is a lot easier to deal with than sort of, huge, very expensive items to maintain and to ship in.
Okay, thanks. Luigi, perhaps maybe slight variation on that question. In terms of those obstacles of moving the UN forward, you mentioned overcoming this kind of concept of a public-private partnership where you kind of work together with the industry to learn about each other, your needs to influence that. It strikes me that probably there's some learning to be done in the private sector as well about the UN and about kind of some of the cultural issues, some of the political issues. And I'm wondering if that kind of public-private partnership could help address those needs and that lack of understanding on that side.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's a great question. I've been sort of understanding the UN since 2011. So for me, it's been a great and challenging and exciting journey to understand this big organization with multiple needs. And in my past, in my previous life, I used to be in the military. So I was part of operations. And one of the reasons why I joined industry was because at that time, I remember thinking, I need that. We need that equipment. We need to see at night. And sometimes, it didn't happen. So being now on this side, it helps me in understanding the requirements and supporting countries in what they're doing. So again, you are right. You're absolutely right. Putting together a link between the private sector and the United Nations will help everyone. I've been listening of how much you consider best value for money, and the only way you can approach that is by using the private sector to analyze the problem, to analyze the cost impact. You can even take the private sector to give you a prototype, to test the solution, to give you immediate results, and even in terms of costing. And then it will give you the right basis to take and informed decisions. Everything we do. When we want to buy a car, what we do? Yes, we need to move from A to B, but we go to a car dealer, we look at cars, we look at what we think is good in a car, safety, consumption, speed, how big it is, and then we take an informed decision. What I see with the UN is that the point of context for you with industries are possibly inexistent. You don't engage with industry, either than attending sometimes exhibitions, and that's very difficult. So you need a proactive way to engage with industry, private sectors, if you want to call it that way, and illustrate your problems and see how the private sector can help you with.
Thanks, Luigi. Tunde, please.
Perhaps I would mention 2 points, and I don't have slides for that. So we have the limits of in the fight against organized crime. Having executive mandate would allow us more technology to use for complex surveillance. But now we are assisting the host state to improve their capacities. And the second point, it was already mentioned, that the sustainable technology is inevitable. I just received feedback from Côte d'Ivoire. Let me share with you. It has been observed that entities provide equipment but do not have the capacity on the ground to deliver and sustain training, leading to the equipment not being properly or not utilized at all. Also, poor storage and usage conditions compounded with the tough climate in most missions translate in a dramatic shortening of the equipment's life. So we have to think of in a peacekeeping context, even the circumstancing, even the training, even the maintenance. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I could take some questions from the field, please. From the. Okay, we'll go here and then we'll go back to you, please, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Hugo Angulo from the Mission of El Salvador. I have a question related to the employment of the new technology in the context of the perception of the population when you are involved in a peacekeeping operation. My question directly is related to, let's say, for instance, I know from a peacekeeping operation mission in which they are using UAVs. And from one of the side of the where they are fighting for it against each other. So if we use this kind of equipment, now the perception of the population will be in the misunderstanding of the use of technology. And then how do you approach these issues? The other question is related to the good or the better for the UN. Is the UN more identified to buy stuff for their own purposes, or do you prefer to get from the TCCs?
Okay, thanks. We'll take a second question here, please.
Thank you. My question is a little bit related. When I look at some of the equipment, recognition of faces and so forth, are you confronted with ethical issues within your company, of course, but I think when you're working with the UN, I guess we are, confronted with higher standards. So are you addressing this? Are you confronted with it? How are you dealing with it? Thank you.
Okay, third question here.
Thank you so much. Dawn Digrius from Stevens Institute of Technology. In thinking about the public-private partnerships, one of the things that I noticed in the presentations today is that there was really no discussion of academia and how universities can play a significant role. And at Stevens, where I am, there are a lot of students and there are also a lot of faculty that are working on very similar types of projects that they don't, from my perspective, know that they can contribute to this conversation, nor have they received any sort of feed from the United Nations saying, please get involved. So how can we create the environment where we can be working together? Thank you.
Thanks. So we have 3 questions. Maybe I'll add a fourth, and then we can have our last round to the panelists. And I'm going to steal this question from someone I was talking to in between sessions because I thought it was a very good one. But we talked a lot about technology. We talked less so about innovation during this panel. And my question is, what do we mean by innovation? And what kind of tolerance there is for failure? Because when we innovate, we fail. If we look at Silicon Valley, 90% of innovative startups fail. So in the UN system, it strikes me that there is not much tolerance for failure. And if we are going to innovate, we have to have more tolerance for that. So I want to ask you about that, and with your perspective, your specific perspectives from where you sit, what kind of tolerance there is and how we could do better to innovate in general. Great, and we'll start, maybe we'll go back to you, Suzanne, to start. Is that okay?
Sure. Can I pick up a particular question? Yes. Or?
Yeah, pick up anything you want to
I think that actually, your question was very interesting for us because we're talking about, when you're talking about the example that I gave of situational awareness information, that comes down to life and death situations where, failure may not be an option. The way that we like to mitigate that risk is to really work in pilot scenarios or in proofs of concept where we can test our solutions from end to end before exposing, our colleagues on the ground and our operations to risk. This is sometimes makes that process a little bit longer, and it may take a little bit more planning, but I think we found that to be a successful mitigation approach. The other portion of the innovation issue is that we are constrained in many ways by procurement rules, but we're also constrained by this end-to-end support life cycle. So something that may seem attractive and innovative, we have to look down the line at what it will require to maintain the technical skills available to us in the countries where we operate, and that sometimes kind of will hold us back a little bit as well.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that question. When we decided to bring that unmanned aerial system into the mission in Congo, we discussed that with the USG, and we clearly said there will be an issue of frustration and there will be an issue of expectation management, because people might think all of a sudden they have a system in their hands and it will solve all of their problems. And what we did is we created a so-called program board. And this program board is meeting every other week. And we have a teleconference, London, Rome, Trieste, Goma, and Kinshasa, and New York. And we discuss very, very openly all our problems. Issues are addressed in a clear and open language. And of course, there were points when we said we have to mitigate this issue, or we are not going to go anywhere. But I can only say this program board works so well that at no point we had the idea this project would be doomed. It's the communications you have. And as you said, you need some tolerance for failure. You need to accept that not everything will go right, but at the same time, you need to be prepared, okay, if things are going into the wrong direction, then change the direction and move on in order to achieve the greater goal. With regard to the perception of the population, that was something that we discussed also for the MONUSCO project. And during the inaugurational flight, we had invited a large number of media, but also the people living on the airfield in Goma, and they live pretty close to the airfield due to the lava that once cut off the part of the runway. Everybody was there and was looking. And for just like weeks, we were flying that system low and noisy without a muffler, so people could see it and could get used to it. And the media were reporting. I had a media backgrounder some time ago where I showed to them videos that explained how this system is working. So we try to reach the public, first of all, by being open and visible to them. But the second thing is we also work with the relevant media in order to help people understand what's going on. And with regard to Stevens Institute, yes, of course, I think the communications between the industry and the UN could be better. But on the other hand, you must see there were years when there were allegations against the UN when it came to procurement of equipment, that not everything went in a transparent way. So sometimes there is some fear of touching the other side.
And specifically, maybe I'll just add to that about the question about academia, is that obviously IPI has a role to play in bringing together academia, the UN, private sector, and things like that. And I should say that with this project that DPKO DFS has been engaged in, the working group on and the expert panel on technology and innovation and peacekeeping, the first thing they did was reach out to a number of NGOs to see what they were doing. And so I think it's a bit incumbent on us and the NGO community to also help reach out to academia to get that conversation going.
I'll talk a little bit about this issue you raised with sort of, I think, Kosovo, right, you said? Okay, well, anyhow, I mean, communication at the local level is really important, particularly in mine action. Our implementing partners and a lot of our staff are local people. We operate often on a community-based approach. So yes, I mean, when you are, I mean, if you can imagine in a rural village somewhere and you have some crazy new technology, some big machine come bulldozing through, that can be quite overwhelming to people that may have never seen anything like this. So certainly it is our role to brief, to communicate with the local village leader or whatever it is, and really not just to talk about the technology, but explain generally what we're doing there. In a place like Afghanistan, it's hugely important that people understand what mine action is and why it's why it's neutral and things like that. So certainly I would include these kinds of informing the local community that we're going to be using this machine. It's going to make a lot of noise, or this is a metal detector. We use it to find mines and things like that. And of course, when you're hiring local people from the community, goes a long way to ensuring that there's confidence in the work that we're doing amongst the local people. And I couldn't really think of any ethical issues as far as any technology that we use, simply because I think the nature of what we're doing is pretty cut and dry. I mean, you could say that mines are unethical. So,
great. Thanks, Kurt. Please, Luigi.
Well, thank you. I think the 4 questions are really, really interesting. On the first one, well, as my panelists around me said, information is everything, informing the population. Obviously, I work for the private sector. Whatever we do, leading on any implementation, we do inform what we do, what we have, what we are going to provide to the population. On the leasing, on the dichotomy between buying and leasing, I can only tell you that the assessment from the private sector is that the world is moving towards the leasing. And that's because you have to consider, as Colonel Yoedeke said, the rapid change in technology, but also the through-life support. If the public sector, let's say, buy a fleet of UAS, of aircraft, and the technology changes, then what do? You have an old version of a UAV, and there is also already a new one, and you have to manage the support, the logistic, to the old one. So I can tell you that, generally speaking, there is the tendency now to go towards leasing instead of buying. As for the ethics, well, a large industry nowadays have department to address ethics, to address code of conduct, rules, principles. We couldn't work in this world without addressing that. The United Nations have a global compact where you have to apply and confirm that you follow ethics. So it is a big thing for us, and I think the industry, the private sector, takes that into very high consideration. Talking of academia, I owe you an apology. That's been not my latest version of my presentation. There was academia, and I strongly believe academia can provide a huge contribution. Just to give you a data, groups like the group I work for, we engage with 250 universities and some sort of 70 think tanks and academia around the world. That's really, common sense to get also that point of view. It's really important. And I was invited to, I live in London, so RUSI and Chatham House are big think tanks where sometimes I go and confront what we do with that environment. Very, very useful. So forgive me for not having mentioned that. On the innovation in terms of failure, my take is this, and I go back to the point of cooperation and collaboration with the private sector. When the public sector in different areas of the world has to start a program and they engage with the private sector to understand what can we do, what options do we have. There is an area called simulation and validation, where in a completely laboratory environment, you can test anything and you can actually get the best suggestions in terms of what you need, how much it's going to cost, what is the impact over the following years. So it is something, I see that as an unavoidable area where the United Nations should look at. Thank you.
Thanks, Luigi. Tunde, please.
Yeah, if I may react for the first question from the police aspect. So we should refer the operational aspects. We can find the UN fundraising. For example, I mentioned the H-Smart, which is let's say free software, and the impact is really good for the enhancing the information management. I mentioned we have foreign police units. Concerning the FPUs, we need the member state to find fund to decrease the level of the equipment. It is stated in the force requirement, so we have standard force requirement. It's time to review these requirements. And our new concept for the specialized teams, it will be a special structure involving the member states, even the United Nations and the host states. The member state will provide specialized experts, and also it would be beneficial to receive equipment. So it will be a hybrid solution, let's say, finding fundraising even from the UN side and even from the donor country. And let me refer for the academic question. Yeah, we have to establish a platform to assess available knowledge and encourage our new generation. The only concern we have, how can we develop the product, because we have classified information, so you probably need this to establish and develop the product, but we have to find solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Tunde. Unless we have any further questions, I think we might wrap up there. We started a little bit early, so I'm happy to be able to let you out a little early. But I want to thank, first of all of you for coming today and staying with us through this second panel. I want to thank my fellow panelists up here. You did an excellent job, and thank you for that. I also want to thank Sunaina Lowe from Department of Peacekeeping and Field Support, who helped coordinate all the presentations from the Secretariat side and is working on the project from their side. It's been a great help. And Giovanni Davoli from the Permanent Mission of Italy, who's been a great partner in this meeting today. I dare say it will be the last thing we do on technology and peacekeeping, so keep your ears open and you'll probably hear from us very soon. Thank you so much for coming and have a good day.